that 60% duty, it was duty free for the first $50. That's changing here very soon. In fact, by the time this launches, it might be already changed.
Aaron, welcome to the Decoding Cross-Border Ecommerce podcast. And new setup here, new gig. We're excited about the just changing up the venue a little bit.
I kind of dig this.
Yeah, I like it too.
Yeah,
feels good.
It does.
So, and just have a casual conversation about Brazil.
Brazil?
Yes.
I've never been to Brazil. Have you ever been there?
Selling to Brazil. You know, Aaron, you asked. And I'm celebrating today with a can of Guaraná.
Guaraná. I would not.
Guaraná is the best.
Have pronounced it that way at all.
No, it is the best soda on the planet. Like better than Diet Coke, better than Diet Mountain Dew, or Mountain Dew or Diet or Coke. I guess if you like the leaded stuff, it's Guaraná is so good. But it's really mostly just popular in Brazil. And
can I make an observation real quick?
Yeah.
I noticed you only brought one.
When I buy them on Amazon, they're a little expensive, Aaron. Want to share?
No, I'm good. I'm good.
Okay, you have your Red Bull.
I do have my Red Bull.
Okay.
I will. Let me waterfall that a little bit.
All right, try it.
Let's try it.
All right, let's do this. No, it's really good.
Yeah, it's good.
I know.
Yeah, I can drink that.
Okay, so I lived in Brazil for a couple of years. So falo português, um pouco. So question, so when I got down there, I didn't speak great first time, right? And I went there on a church mission. So I'm with what's called my companions, the person I have to be with, 24/7, which you're familiar with this whole process. So I'm with this, and we go into a house, and they're just chatting over, at dinner. It's like my first day there, and I am super confused, don't know what anyone's saying. And so, my companion turns to me, he's like, so, Clint, how it's like, I've forgotten some English words. What's the word for when you get, a check? Like, it's like in a certain interval. What is that? What's that called? What is it? Do you know, Aaron? What's that? When you get a check, like from your employer on a certain
payday,
interval, and then everyone starts laughing. Because payday is I farted. So there you go, Aaron. You just learned some Portuguese for today.
I'm not going to forget that Portuguese word.
No.
Nope, I know that now.
Yeah, I didn't forget it either.
Those are the type that you always remember, right?
Yep. Yeah.
Oh, that's funny.
So great lessons. But look, Brazil's a big country. Actually, it's a really big wealth gap. And so do I think that there's a lot of e-commerce opportunity in the favelas and the smaller, the more poor areas? Probably not, but maybe a little bit, but there really are some wealthy people there. So if you do sell online, there are buyers in Brazil, and the wealthy people often speak really good English, but it's kind of expensive to ship into Brazil. And I want to talk a little bit about that. The currency is how do you call it? Look, you said it like everybody else would.
It's like an American would, right? I mean, it just looks like real. I mean,
yeah, real. So whenever a word starts with the letter H, R, it gets the H sound. So real.
Yeah, I didn't know that.
Yeah,
I didn't know that because I'm thinking like the soccer / football teams that you see out there that are real.
Yeah, real.
No.
Yeah.
Real. Okay, got it.
Okay. Let's talk about landed costs to Brazil, though. So, importing into Brazil, what are some things that are unique or different when you're selling into Brazil?
Well, one thing, just in general, it's really expensive. It's not uncommon for the duty and taxes to end up being as much or more than the product. But that still means that, if there's wealthy people trying to buy stuff that they can't get locally, when it's all said and done, it can still be justifiable for them to buy. What they do is for, when we're talking B2C e-commerce, for shipments under $3,000 US, they do a fixed duty rate of 60%. And then they do have a number of states that have variable tax rates, but they're all really close, between 17 and 19%. But it's kind of interesting the way they do the calculations, because it ends up being about 20.5 to 23.5% if you kind of normalize it for the way everybody applies
That's
tax.
like the effective tax rate.
Yeah,
is like
they apply tax in a different way, which we can unpack that now if you want, or we can.
Which is why you were saying it gets almost, with the way that they do that calculation, it almost just compounds on the number in a way. It just gets
and
very expensive.
I mean, you think about it, if you have 60% duty applied to the product and the shipping costs, and let's say the shipping costs aren't that cheap, right? So then you add roughly, if I normalize this across other ones, the effective tax rate is 20.5 to 23.5% on top of the product, the shipping, and that 60% duty. All of a sudden, that's a lot of duty and tax, right?
And that's why it's easy to get $100 item to cost $200 just to get the item in, not even including shipping or anything else.
Yep.
Yeah. No, it's wild. I remember getting packages to Brazil, and it was really hard sometimes to get your stuff. But the tax, which is ICMS tax, is I think there's about 26 states or so that the tax. Well, now I do want to say, actually, I want to give them credit though for that simplified tax system. I know it's expensive. I don't want to give them credit for it being 60% duty, because that seems absurd. It is absurd. But just coming up with a simplified way to calculate duty for essentially low value goods was, and this has been around for a long time. They've been doing this for a while. I thought it was pretty creative. Really, very easy way to just calculate your import costs.
You see a number of countries that do something similar. The idea is, hey, we're going to make it really simple to get packages, to clear packages and get into the country and not have to go through as much effort to.
What are some other ones that do it with duty though, like that, like a simplified duty rate?
You've got
India has some stuff.
India
right?
does it. Yep, India does it. That's another expensive one. Japan does it a little differently. They basically just have fewer categories, so it's not just one rate, but there's a few rates. China does it, but theirs varies based on how you clear it. They have different ways of doing it, but they do have some simplified stuff. But now
that you mention all these countries, they usually are pretty expensive with their duty rate.
Yeah.
So once you simplify it, it kind of
maybe they simplify it so to make more. Japan is the only one though that actually does a discount, but we don't want to talk about Japan today. But
yeah. Not. We still need it. We need a podcast on Japan.
We do,
and we need one on India for sure.
Yes.
China would be an interesting one too.
Yes.
Actually, China to Brazil. Okay, we're going to get to this in
we
a
will
second.
talk about China to Brazil.
In fact, I'm introing to this right now. But tell me a little bit about the de minimis history in Brazil that you know. So, because is there a de minimis, and can someone take advantage of it pretty easily?
Yeah. So history is they've usually had a normal commercial shipment, B2C, going in is no de minimis. They charge both the duty and the tax from $1.
So they're getting 60% duty.
Or real one.
Ooh, okay.
So, but the funny thing is their stuff's based in USD. Like the $3,000 limit is based in USD. Their de minimis that I'm going to talk about next is based in USD. So anything under $50, so $50 US, would be if it's a consumer to consumer, a personal shipment, or postal. It used to be postal too. Postal Stream would take advantage of this quite heavily. They just go in, duty free, right? And that was a de minimis. Well, if you can imagine,
how do I take advantage of that?
If you wanted to take advantage of it as a commercial retailer, let's say you're in a certain region of the world like China, and you had a lot of low value goods going into Brazil, and you made them all come in appearing like personal shipments, so that way you could take advantage of that. Then you could skirt a lot of duty and tax. So that's where Brazil wasn't very happy about that. They saw this loophole being exploited, and they wanted to figure out a way to
So you're saying that the Chinese took advantage of, which they are very good at taking advantage of. Any program they can find a way to. There's so much volume coming out of there.
Yeah.
And,
I mean,
and they are so cognizant of the price, right? And so anytime they can save anything, so they started taking advantage of this system.
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
And Brazil caught on. So what did they do about it?
So they put in last year. They put in their version of a low value tax scheme where companies can sign up for this program, and as part of the program, they actually give the benefit of the $50 rule. There's still the tax, the 17 to 19%. There's still that applied, but the 60% duty, there isn't any for the first $50. So basically, they give an incentive, say, hey, come and play nice, and we'll give you this benefit.
So is this as simple as, hey, we're really easy to remit the tax at this amount because you don't have to remit to 27 different states or 26. Yeah. And we're going to give a duty de minimis in there too, because obviously you're now just doing remittance.
Yes. So what they did is they said, okay, as part of the program, you can do a flat 17% now. You don't have to do 17 to 19%. It can just be a flat 17%. And then that 60% duty, which sometimes they call it a tax too in all the discussions, but that's really the duty. That goes away for the first $50, which is cool. Like that's big.
Yeah.
The way they implement it though is, of course, every country that has their low value tax stuff likes to do it a little different. Brazil didn't make it easy per se, but these bigger companies, they can justify getting registered, but it actually is all managed through your carrier. So you actually have to do a registration to be part of the program with the Brazilian government, and along with it, you actually have to supply a contract of your carrier agreement, make sure you're working with someone that you can comply with, and then you're actually making payments like regularly as the shipments are going out.
And it's meant for marketplaces, really. It was kind of...
That was a big target, yeah.
Didn't they call it something around the marketplaces, even the name?
Or in the... Remessa... I don't know what it all means. Is it Remessa? I don't know. I don't know how to pronounce it.
I'm not sure what...
I feel like now I'm questioning every pronunciation.
So, okay. No, that's I'm really excited to talk about the U.S. de minimis, too, at some point, right? Mm-hmm. And how... and USMCA, because China's also figured out the loophole with USMCA to get things into the country duty free and all of that.
Yep. But it is important to note though, they just came out that 60% duty. It was duty free for the first $50. That's changing here very soon. In fact, by the time this launches, it might be already changed. But they're going to change that to where it's 20% for the first $50. So it started out as 0. Okay. It goes to 20. Is it going to keep going up after that? I don't know, but there's still a benefit to it.
So why wouldn't then a Chinese seller continue to take advantage of the C2C?
I'm not saying that there's people still not doing that.
Okay,
but they're trying to crack down on all of that stuff. I think it's in everyone's best interest to jump on board with this. But yeah.
No, that's good. All right. Usually in these podcasts, when we talk about we have a country guide, right, on Brazil. We talk about the carrier fees, how they're different going into Brazil, and there are a few exceptions. Mm-hmm. We talk about kind of payment methods, things like that. But tell me a little bit about the disbursement fees or advancement fees, to customs when you're selling into Brazil.
Yeah, there's really not, outside of those the tax and the duty. The only things you typically see are coming from carriers, whether it be brokerage fees, disbursement fees, etc. So there's a million different fees out there depending on the carrier. Some of them don't charge anything, but your express carriers are typically going to have a disbursement fee. DHL is going to be based on where you're shipping from and what your agreement is. So like if I'm shipping from the US, it's going to be $17. But if you're shipping from somewhere else, it's based on your contracted amount there. That's the same for every country you're shipping to, Brazil included. FedEx and UPS are in that kind of middle teen range of, it's usually about 2% of the duty and tax amount, or $13 or $15, depending on whichever one's greater. And then if it's a DDU shipment though, things can change too. If they're actually collecting on delivery, it can be more expensive with
I think FedEx tiers it even when it's going DDU.
Yeah. And it can go up to $25+.
Yeah. No, that's wild. Something else that's interesting going to Brazil is, so when I was there, I'm checking into a hotel and they're asking me for my CPF number. And this is like your personal identification number, right? That everybody has it, and they've required, because a lot of people were skirting taxes, and somehow they're using this to track, locally, like make sure that nobody is transacting without this number, so they can kind of track some things with taxes. But it applies also on imports, and so everything I did, every single thing I did, I'd buy like a can of Guaraná.
Now you were just there.
I was just there. I was in Manaus about a month and a half ago.
So what you're talking about is current. This
Extremely
isn't from
no. Those
decades
are very
ago.
very,
This is
very
now.
current. Yeah. And I'm having I'm just buying a little thing, and they're asking me for my CPF number. So it's if you're selling there, you need it on the paperwork, or they're going to be contacting the consignee for their CPF.
That was my next question. So if you can capture that from your customers at checkout, then it helps streamline the whole process.
Which we do in our checkout, right? So with our checkout, because it's localized for Brazil, it's in Portuguese. We're also collecting that CPF number at time of checkout, so that it can then easily just go right onto the labels and ship out without any issue with that CPF number on there.
Cool.
Buying online. So I want to talk a little bit about Boletos, and because in Brazil and you're somewhat familiar with Boletos, but
I've heard the name. It's a currency thing, right?
But
I don't.
It's a payment. Well, it's a payment. Yeah,
it's a type of payment. Method. That's right.
It's a payment.
But
method.
I really know nothing about it. So explain to me how it's used and how prevalent it is down in Brazil.
Yeah. So when you're placing an online order, you choose Boleto Bancário, right? Which is this like kind of it's a paper kind of it has like a QR code on it. So it has the amount that needs to be paid, the due date, and the payment information. So when you do that, you download it or print it off or whatever, and you can go to like an ATM or to your bank in person. So the retailer actually isn't sure that the order is completed at this point, right? But it is completed. The order is completed. You complete it, you pay with Boletos, but the payment doesn't actually occur until that paper or the QR code gets handed to the bank. And you can do it online too, possibly like outside the transaction. Then the bank will then transfer the money, and then you have to listen with like a webhook, right? With Stripe or something else, right? Like, okay, payment came in, and then you can now release it for shipping.
Okay, hold on a second here. So this is kind of like those. Well, this isn't.
You can actually go to
credit.
You can
right?
actually go to the post office and do this too, like with your Boletos.
Okay, so the paper is from the consumer. They have the paper.
Yep.
Where do they get the paper from?
So when you're processing the Boletos and you create the order, you then give them that QR code and that printout. It's like that's the Boleto. The Boleto is the print. They take that, and now that is their.
They have to then go
their
pay.
receipt to then authorize their bank to send the money. Because a lot of people in Brazil, because it's super poor, they don't have credit cards. This is kind of their online banking mechanism for like wire transfers almost.
Is it like an IOU then?
Yeah, exactly.
Is that really what it is?
That is exactly what it is. It's an IOU.
If you go into the, let's use the post office. You brought that up as an example. If I go into the post office and I go to ship a package, they give me a paper that then I go give to my bank and say, hey, I owe these guys. And then the bank processes that and sends the money.
Yep.
And so
you could also do it right on your, like, offline after you complete the order, right on your phone or with your computer. Like,
so you can do
that
it electronically.
Yes, you can do it electronically, but traditionally it's kind of been a...
So it feels like there's risk there for the retailer. Is there?
If they ship it, yeah. That's why you have to put it in a hold process. It's you got to be careful if you want to turn on Boletos in your checkout, because if you do, and then you ship it and the consignee never pays for it, you're out.
So are people paying, like if they just go to the store to buy milk and bread, they walk out with the milk and bread, right?
I don't know how often it's used in like a...
Okay, so this is more of an online thing.
I think actually it's a really good question. When I was there, I just used cash.
Okay.
I never had a bank account. To really use Boletos.
Boletos. Yeah.
I don't know if it was used in a grocery store environment, That's a really good question, though.
This just makes me like, I get it and it makes sense. But anytime I talk about IOUs, I just think of the movie Dumb and Dumber.
I think it would be more like at the grocery store, if you did it, you would print it out, pay for it, and then it'd be held for pickup, and you go pick up your groceries.
Okay, interesting.
Okay, so why is this Dumb and... Okay, give me the Dumb and Dumber parallel. What are you...
Oh, I just remember they filled the briefcase full of IOUs as they were spending the money.
That's right.
I have a question about that, actually.
Yes.
So it has to be linked to a bank account, right?
Right.
So is there some sort of like accountability between the institution and the bank? Like you have your end of the receipt as the shipper, right?
Yep.
And you could be like, hey, bank, these, like, if they didn't turn it in, could you turn your end in?
No. But, so you can't turn your end in and say they owe me the money. You don't get your money unless they turn their end in. So you don't want to give them the goods unless they turn in their, the money is sent. However, there's no fraud. Right? So that is the benefit to the retailer is
there's no fraud.
There's zero fraud.
But everybody's on Scout's honor over there. Pretty much.
Well, I think that typically you just do not give the goods until the payment is received, and there's about a 1 to 3 day processing time until the payment hits your bank account. So it's almost like you're ordering for online pickup, right? You place the order, you go to pick it up, but you can't pick it up unless you've actually already transferred the money through a separate mechanism, right? And so, but it's on the seller to know that it is that the transfer has been completed.
That's okay. That's really fascinating. Sorry, I just wanted to ask that question.
No, that's good. That's good. So Brazil does things. They got a few unique things about the way they do things, which I think is pretty common when you look at each country. They've got their unique ways of doing payment or other things, and the tax thing too. I think it's worth. We touched on it earlier. 17 to 19% really is effective tax rate of 20.5% to 23.5%, and some people might be going, "What?" The easiest way to think of it is 17 to 19% of the amount they take. 17 to 19% of the total amount paid. So instead of building up and saying, "Oh well, here's the product and shipping, now add 17% of that amount," they take 17% of the total amount transacted. They get 17% of that gross amount. Does that make sense?
So now here's one part I want to see if I understand. The total amount, to calculate that, do you calculate tax into the total amount?
No, they just look at the total transaction value and say, I'm taking 17% of that.
Okay, but what's in the total transaction value? Give me what's in there. Product?
Yeah,
right?
Product, shipping, duty. Yeah, all of that.
But not tax and then tax.
Right. But
because I thought for some reason maybe they did the tax and then they tax the whole thing.
No, and so what it is if you want to say, hey, and this is where you have to do funny math when we're doing landed cost calculations of, okay, we have this much, when you're building up to it, right, to the gross amount that has to be paid, you have to say, okay, here's this net amount of duty, tax, shipping, and now to make it so they get 17% of the whole and these amounts stay the same, you got to do some different, you can't just say apply 17% to this. You have to do some different math.
Got it.
That gets you a gross amount, so then they get 17%.
It has to net out to 17% of the total in the end. So you have to do the funky math to get to what that's going to be.
Yep.
So it's not 17% of the product shipping duty. It's 17% of what the total amount is going to be.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
It has to net out to 17. It's like this. Does the circular formula here? Doesn't this break in Excel? This formula?
No, no,
it's not that circular.
It's not that circular. Yeah. No, but it is. It's a little mind bending for sure.
Yeah. No. But it's an amazing place. I would love to see them change some of their to make it more friendly for e-commerce into Brazil. There are some trade agreements between, I think it was like Uruguay, Paraguay, and Argentina, where you can actually get close to, or 0% tariffs. But even on most of their trade agreements out there, they're reduced and not, because they're very protective of their industry. So
do you see that sentiment? Where do you see that going in the future? Do you see them getting more protective, or do you see them loosening up and maybe becoming even more trade friendly?
Well, the current president is, I don't see getting more trade friendly with either, probably. So yeah, the previous one was, very far right. The current one's more far left, and I think in both cases, I think the far left president is probably wanting pretty high taxes and tariffs. He's probably not going to do it. And then the far right one's probably pretty protectionist, and maybe he's wanting higher tariffs. Actually, I'm not super familiar with what, but Bolsonaro, who was the president before, and I think I got his name right, he didn't change anything when he was in office. So I just don't see this changing. It hasn't changed forever.
So it kind of is what it is, but
unless Malay, from Argentina takes over. But that's a whole nother, we need a conversation about Argentina at some point, because I wonder what laws are going to change there with Malay in office. But that would be a fun one too.
But looking at the current landscape, there's nothing really to say things are going to change one way or the other. It kind of is what it is. However, there's a lot of people there.
Yep.
And there may be a lot of people that don't have the means to be able to buy cross-border online, but there's still a lot that do. And so it's definitely a country worth looking at if you're selling goods online.
Yeah. Well, I was looking forward to this one. Thanks, Aaron. This was fun.
Yeah. Thanks, Clint.
All right.